So good morning and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Nizar Ladik and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the new Digital Research Infrastructure Organization, also affectionately known as ENDRIO. And I'm excited to welcome you to our third day of our virtual town hall series. I see a number of new faces and some familiar good friends, and so welcome to our third day. Day one, for those who were unable to participate, the theme was awareness and accessibility in relation to our needs assessment. Day two yesterday was governance and policy, and day three today is in relation to operations. We're pleased to share and discuss our preliminary Canadian DRI needs assessment findings with you today. Thank you for the overwhelming response and participation in these sessions. The attendance has been actually, quite honestly, much larger than we had anticipated, and so it shows how all of you are invested in working together. We have increased the number of breakout rooms for group discussion accordingly, and so we appreciate your patience as we adapt our environment to this new extended capacity. Our team is eager to listen and gather more input from you on how we can further shape a pan-Canadian DRI ecosystem that better serves the Canada's research community. We will begin today with a land acknowledgement, followed by a brief overview of our event agenda. As we meet virtually this afternoon across the country, I would like to acknowledge that we are all located on different unceded traditional territories of different nations. It is important to understand the long-standing history that has brought each of us to reside on these lands and to seek to understand our place within that history. I myself am based in Toronto, and I acknowledge that I am on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Some of my colleagues are located in Ottawa on unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whereas some of my colleagues in Montreal are situated on the traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka. As we move on to the proceedings of our meeting, I would like to extend our respect to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for their valuable past and present contributions to this wonderful country and land we call Canada. To start, we want to reiterate why these town halls are such an important part of the validation phase of our needs assessment process. The preliminary findings, which my colleague Felipe will discuss shortly, is the culmination of 6 months of consultations conducted by our team and working groups with researchers across the country. Many of our 22-member Researcher Council members have volunteered their time to serve as either note takers or moderators in your various sessions. We want to thank everyone who has participated in this process so far, whether through a white paper submission or responding to our survey. As Felipe will mention shortly, we've had 1,380 respondents from coast to coast responding to today's survey, to the survey that we'll discuss today. We're not only looking forward to validating some of our findings to date, but also working with you to define other findings that require additional feedback. Once we review the preliminary findings, which will be a short summary relating to the information we released last week, there's both a copy of the slides and a video that takes you through all of our findings to date. We will then go to a breakout room for deeper discussion. There, our volunteer moderators will facilitate the discussion through questions relating to today's theme. We also have note takers to capture the discussion points and questions raised through a Google Doc that will be shared with each room. You'll have the chance to comment verbally in each breakout room via the chat function within the room, which will be captured for review, and by adding your own comments to the Google Doc in your rooms. Following the breakout room discussions, we'll all come back together and report a key discussion point or question that came through before we wrap up for the day. Following the events, recordings of each town hall in both English and French will be available on our website, along with related summary findings for review. However, we will not be recording the breakout rooms themselves. We look forward to an engaging discussion ahead, and with that, I will hand it over to Felipe to review the preliminary findings related to today's theme.
Thank you, Nizar. Welcome, everybody, and welcome back to many of you. Before we start, I think the last 2 days have been acknowledging the work of the ENDRIO team, who has put together everything that we're going to be presented today. But I think I would like to take also the time to acknowledge the work of the moderators and the note takers. And so with that, I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and also welcome our first cohort of co-op students, Hind and Otman. Welcome, guys. So as we move forward, I guess I would like to ask the traditional question: if you've had the chance to review the documentation that we've shared, or if you've been present in the last two sessions. This will really help me to maybe just guide a little bit better. So the answers are coming in. Perfect. Thank you. I'll end the poll now. So I see that there are a lot of you who have been here. So I'll just go quickly through the initial parts just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So today we are in the validation phase of our needs assessment. And so this town hall are really just to make sure that what we found through the three mechanisms of our consultation, the white papers, the current documentation, and the survey, that we've got it right. And we want to make sure that if we missed anything, that you bring it up and we can include it in our needs assessment report that we'll write up and share with you for feedback at the end of the summer. So who did we hear from during our consultation phase? So we received over 105 white papers from 350 unique authors from across organizations that included universities, stakeholders in the DRI ecosystem, and other just unique individuals. At the same time, we received roadmaps and strategic plans that we're going to use to align ourselves as we develop our own strategic plan. In terms of the survey, as Nizar mentioned, an amazing response from across the country with almost 1,400 respondents. Now, the graph that you've seen in the previous events, on the left side, we have the geographical representation of the respondents of the survey. And on the right one, you have the representation by discipline. So we had a very good representation throughout the country, although yesterday it was really mentioned that we haven't heard from the territories. And so somebody actually followed up with us, and we are now envisioning a way to engage with those communities that are certainly very important. So I would like to maybe clarify that this is a place for you to share with us what are your concerns, because we really want to respond to your needs. When we ask our community what should Andrew prioritize to meet your research needs, the answer was a little bit complicated, because the reality is that we need to work on a little bit of everything. When we start looking at the disciplines, however, we do see that some components of the DRI are common across disciplines, such as the training for HQP, but some are very specific to disciplines, such as online knowledge mobilization for the arts and social sciences and humanities. Now, when we start our discussion today, please bear in mind that this is what we're dealing with. It's a diverse need, is the diverse needs of our community that we're really trying to respond to. So specific for today, we're going to be discussing the operations. And when we talk about operations, we really want to emphasize that it's not just how Andrew should work internally, but how Andrew should work with the stakeholders that are working already in the national scene. And the message was really clear from the white papers. And the reality is that the community is eager for change and is eager for an integrated and cohesive DRI ecosystem. So Andrew is in an excellent position to respond to those needs and maybe improve the way that researchers apply for funding and then apply for compute allocation. So we really want to work seamlessly with the researcher and the research community to make sure that we can support our researchers throughout the research life cycle, not just for the computing component, but also for the storage of their data and also for the curation and then for the preservation of that data. We also realize that many of you are starting to use commercial cloud. How can we work better with you and those commercial cloud providers to make sure that your IP stays safe? Hopefully, we can discuss this with you today. The other component that we realize is really important is international cooperation. As Canadian researchers engage in larger and larger initiatives, such as the SKA, the Square Kilometer Array, that requires international cooperation, we really need to make sure that we develop the standards and policies to support interoperability. Another component was that we don't just need to work with the tri-agency to ensure that that we're providing the service that you need. We need to work closely with all of the partners and stakeholders at the different levels, at the provincial, at the regional, at the local levels as well. In this regard, we realize that HQP located at the institution are extremely important and are that gateway that would allow researchers to tap into the national resources. We really want to work with institutions, and please share your opinions on how we should do that. Finally, NGO wants to be an agile and researcher-centered organization, but we also want to be accountable. So share with us your opinions of what are the key performance metrics that we should use to make sure that we are responding properly to what you're suggesting and what you need. So with that in mind, I think we're ready to go into the breakout sessions where you will have, again, a moderator, a note taker. And please just be mindful that these discussions obviously can be a little bit heated because the topics are very important for everybody. So please try to be as respectful as possible. Happy discussions and see you in 30 minutes. So I think we're all back. So thank you everybody for participating. Yes, welcome back. So I was in one of the rooms and we had some great discussion. So I guess maybe just as we did yesterday, I'll open the floor for the moderators, for 3 moderators to maybe step in and share some of the key findings or conclusions that they've heard in their breakouts. Jennifer?
Yeah, we had a really great discussion in our room about making sure that researchers have input as directly as possible into the work of whatever is going on at NGO or other national service provider organizations. Because there are often so many intermediaries. You need to go through you need to go through a VPR who's busy, who's trying to represent the needs of thousands of people at their institution. You need to go through different levels within an organization like Compute Canada. You need to go through different other resources within an institution. And having a way that researchers can be directly involved more than just through something like a researcher council. The researcher council is great, but again, they become kind of an intermediary between the researchers and the governance. And again, they're like the VPRs. They have to represent thousands and thousands of people, and they don't have necessarily capacity to do that either. And they also represent broadly the member institutions of NGO. And there are people who are researchers who are not at member institutions. So how can they get involved? And whatever interaction there is needs to be transparent and bidirectional. And I'm sorry, Mark, I'm forgetting the last thing you said because it was really good. Transparency, bidirectionality, and ongoing relationship. And that also needs to be taken into account in things like measuring success. It can't just be, I mean, metrics are great, but there also needs to be processes of evaluation. Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes.
Yeah,
that's great. Those are great points. We had similar discussions earlier today in the French session and even in our breakout room. Is there any other opinions from the moderators who would like to share something? Before I start calling on individuals, Randy?
Yeah, we had a good session. I'm just looking at my note taker, took 3 pages of notes. So I mean, some of the key things that came out of it is that maybe for engagement, it would be very valuable to have targeted focus groups. One of the other things for communication that came out, and that was a really good suggestion, is she said that the CFI has a very good way of communicating people with very specific role-based contacts. So that maybe that something based at sites or at universities where if you have a question on security, you would have a contact there rather than just going to the CIO or a VPR office to do that. So that would be a more effective and quicker way of communicating. There were also comments that maybe we in NGO should consider a distributed model where not just personnel but hardware are distributed, because it does benefit the sites and build up expertise and access to resources. So not just building a small number of operational sites is the optimal for everyone. We had a brief discussion about operations in terms of 24/7, and that clearly should be a discussion between various groups and what's required and the cost implications. Do people want 24/7 or a subset of services by 24/7? We also touched on security and the role of, should Canary and Endrio and the sites should communicate. And I think a lot of that's already happening. And, maybe the Canary can provide tools and expertise to all of the organizations under that. And then the final thing is, we tried to think of performance metrics, and that's not an easy thing to specify. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Randy. And for those who may not be familiar, Randy is actually the chair of our researcher council, and he's very diligent in ensuring that we're never losing our touch with the research community. So thank you, Randy, for all the work. I see two hands, so maybe Seppo and Chen.
Excuse me. Thanks, Felipe. So and Randy, certainly some of the topics that you mentioned resonated also with our group, and the difficulty of defining KPIs, and also challenges that the KPIs need to be different for different sort of audiences and disciplines. You have the heavy users, so their expectations and deliverables are different from perhaps from the long tail and new and emerging users. You don't measure those in CPU core years delivered or anything like that. So and then on the other hand, those metrics need to be, quantifiable, but also actionable. So really the one key point that resonated in our group, I think, and we thought, was the difficulty that Endrio is facing regarding, like we saw earlier in the presentation, the huge list of priorities that we have, and then regarding how to then prioritize over all the ask that is out there. And everything is, of course, very important, but still we have limited pool. So that how it is important that Endrio articulates the decision-making process and is transparent regarding short, mid, and long-term sort of priorities. And also there was concern and consensus about the importance of efficiency. Ultimately, we have limited pool of monies. We are using taxpayer monies for important causes, but that there's an efficiency so that the operations, for example, are not siloed, rather than should be more sort of not necessarily integrated, but more coherent, more sort of efficient there, and so that Endrio, for example, could get a commitment from organizations that work on similar goals, that there's more collaboration between those. So those kind of thoughts and concerns in our group.
Thank you, Seppo. So maybe Chen quickly, and then Susan Brown as well.
Thanks, Felipe. So the working group, the working group 2 has very good discussion. So we came to some conclusions, such as the FAIR as a framework for the KPI indicators is very important. And also the sustainability is also a key factor to the, the equitable DRI in Canada. And also the stakeholders have been defined by, had different definitions. And also the most important some additional, the groups also include international global groups and consortium, the industry as the stakeholders is the key. And we also discussed, the central hub office is needed for this, as a point, the federated versus the distributed approach, overall. And also it's important to develop a budget plan and sustainability model, and to have this KPI, to spend within the budget plan. That's our discussion points. Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chen. And I really like what I hear about being accountable and transparent with the use of taxpayers' dollars. I've heard this so many times from Nizar, so I'm pretty sure we will be ensuring that. Susan.
Yeah, I'll just be brief. Our group focused a lot on both the transparency and accountability piece and the KPIs, and in thinking about what a dashboard might look like, a public dashboard that would report on what resources had been allocated, how they had been used, and what the outcomes had been in terms of things like trainees and publications and data sets, and that this could be done in such a way as to actually facilitate the movement of the researchers' work forward in terms of making it more available, providing grounds for collaboration, reuse of data, and so on. We also focused on the need for Indigenous data sovereignty and the extent to which that probably requires a separate kind of structure that would be led by Indigenous communities, that would have to be funded equitably and resourced sufficiently so that the specific needs of Indigenous knowledge production and data creation and for digital research and infrastructure across the board could be met. And that will be a real challenge given the lack of models for this kind of structure.
Definitely a challenge that we are looking to work with our partners. So just being mindful of the time, but I know that Nizar has become really good with those closing remarks, so maybe we can take a few extra minutes to keep the discussion. If there are no other moderators who would like to maybe, oh, Rebecca, excellent.
Thank you for fitting me in. I just wanted to bring up the points. It was a great discussion in our chat, and we discussed many points, including DRI procurement, increasing partnerships and making sure that we're supporting collaboration across Canada. And the final point, and I'll keep this very brief for you, was that we want to make sure that when we're looking at success factors, how are we measuring these in different areas? How are they being evaluated within the different arms of INDRIO, and making sure that the individuality of different research areas is being considered, as well as interplay across the different arms of INDRIO as well. I'll wrap it up for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Great points. Definitely a lot of things to think. And I really think that as a hive mind, we can definitely approach all of the obstacles in a more efficient way. I wonder if there's just a final thought from one of the audience members before we go into closing remarks. Okay, I don't see any hands, so I'm going to share my screen just really quickly, just for the final remarks.
Thanks, Felipe. And thank you, everyone, for your time today. Lots of engaged, active discussion. What I want to share is this isn't the last opportunity. I've been saying it over the last couple of days. If you've been able to participate, this was never meant to be a one and done. This was a validation opportunity for some of the things that we were receiving on paper. And so conversations like this and many more conversations like this are envisioned as we move forward. I think one of the things that struck me as I popped in and out of rooms, and I apologize if that's at all distracting, but it really allows me to sort of hear the variety of perspectives from the 13 to 15 various discussion forums that are happening in tandem. A number of things that I picked up on that were the opportunity for additional community engagement and finding the appropriate balance between virtual mechanisms such as this and in person. I think all of us are really waiting until we are able to return to in-person meetings and the opportunity to be able to meet with one another and engage with one another and affording us a dynamic that doesn't necessarily happen through virtual. And yet, thoughtfully, if these things were, easy, folks, we would have done them before. But thoughtfully, as I popped into other rooms, folks were saying, well, virtual has enabled a level of freedom and expression that was lost to me as an early career researcher or as a mother with responsibilities for childcare, and I don't have to hop on a plane and travel to Ottawa. And so I think there has to be that appropriate balance between enabling the face-to-face communication opportunities and the engagement that each of us sort of strive for in that regard, while also respecting that you are busy people with responsibilities personally and professionally, and to serve or give you the opportunity to do so. And so one of the things that we also strive to achieve as an organization in our very early days of formation is to give you a variety of mechanisms to have input, whether it's forums such as this, written opportunities, email, and many other things. And perhaps as I conclude, to let you out on time, one of the things that came through clear and in a few forums is the need to strive towards sustainable funding. A couple of my colleagues commented on the desperate need to get off that roller coaster funding mechanism that we've all been used to, that's characterized our ecosystem, where we get this injection of funds and new equipment and everyone's thrilled, and we run it until the days where the environment is dying and the warranties are expiring. And that's no way to serve researchers in Canada. And so our commitment, or our hope perhaps, is to suggest to you that that's clear on our radar screen, and we hope to be able to do that in the coming months. So with that, folks, as we complete the validation phase, we will be compiling all of the findings in our needs assessment report, which we will release to you yet again in the summer, and have the opportunity for you to comment. Did we get it right? Are there still nuances that we need to appreciate? All of this information is going to inform our national service delivery model. There were questions earlier in the chat, which I tried to respond to, about the need to truly design a service which respects the lifeblood of our ecosystem, which are the highly qualified personnel, in a way that's most responsive to researchers. It has nothing to do with Endrio or what our job is. Our job is to serve researchers, and we want to do so in a mechanism that researchers respond to. So once again, the recordings from today's portions of our event will be on the website in the coming days. We'll also share a post-event survey with you later this week that perhaps will talk a little bit about community engagement and how we should be doing that as time moves forward. But in the spirit of our continued interest in hearing from you, do use the email address that's listed on this screen to reach out and share your thoughts and ideas. Thanks again to each and every one of you for engaging discussion. I was so great to hear such a variety of different voices. Before we wrapped up, we wanted to just share that we appreciate your time, your energy, and we look forward to seeing some of you tomorrow for our last session. And for those unable to join us, thank you for your time and energy. All the best.
Thank you.